one. I'm just going to read something from a journal that I noted down today. It's from Debelle. It was published in 2019. Australia's financial regulators have recently made a call for action to deal with climate change with the Reserve Bank of Australia, the Australian Prudential Regulation Authority and the Australian Securities and Investment Commission citing risks posed by climate change as a central concern for the economy and financial stability. As the Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of Australia noted, the risks that climate change posed to the Australian economy are first order and have knock-on implications for the macroeconomic policy. We're a shire that struggles with money. Yes, everything comes from ratepayers. I think we need to be ambitious with this plan if we are going to save ourselves in the future. We know that with less rainfall, which is an effect from climate change, the bushfire season is just going to get worse and worse, where, if I remember correctly, we're at 97% bushfire prone shire. I can't put a price on the damage that bushfires cause and people's livelihoods. Try and tell a volunteer bushfire that we're not doing everything we can to prevent these issues in the future. I don't think it's something that's going to simply make us feel good, as you say, Mr. President. I think it's something that needs to be done, and we need to be ambitious in this plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mazzoni. All those in favour of the alternate motion? That's 3. All those against? That's 4. Motion is lost. 3-4. Councillor Mack, you foreshadowed the officer's recommendation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. President.
Are you happy to move that?
I am, thank you.
Is there a councillor who is happy to second the motion as put forward by Councillor Mack, which is the officer's recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us to... So I'll just pause. Sorry. That's okay. Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 10.1.5, which is proposed Metropolitan Region Scheme Amendment 142-71428 North East Baldivis District Structure Plan, Precinct 1 and Precinct 2 to 4 inclusive. Request for comment. That was passed en bloc. 10.1.6 is draft scheme amendment for development contribution plans. That too was passed en bloc. That brings us to agenda item 10.1.7. 10.1.7 is legal agreement to secure DCP contributions for DCA1 in the form of a capitable interest in land to deliver Orton Road upgrade, Western Australian Land Authority. That too was passed en bloc. 10.1.8 is legal agreement to secure DCP contributions for DCA1 in the form of a capitable interest in land to deliver key road and public open space infrastructure, LWP Byford Syndicate Proprietary Limited. That too was passed en bloc. That brings us now to agenda item 10.2. Have I missed one? 10.1.9, apologies. 10.1.9 is the next item of agenda. That's update regarding draft master plan for lot 500, Lampeter Road, and request for West Australian Planning Commission to initiate a Metropolitan Region Scheme Amendment, lot 500, number 10, Lampeter Drive, Mardella. Is there a councillor who'd like to move a motion? Councillor Duggan, is that the officer's recommendation?
No, I'd like to move option 2 that's available, thanks, that the council does not request initiation of the Metropolitan Region Scheme Amendment at this time, with point 2 being the same, that is request the business case be submitted to the 25-26 budget to undertake a new master plan and business plan in accordance with S 3.59 of the Local Government Act 1995 to investigate the potential for the site to be utilised for equine facility purposes. and how any portion outside this could be maximised for its highest and best use, please.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there a councillor who's happy to second option number 2 as per the agenda? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Oh, sorry. Councillor Jarrett. Thank you, Madam Secretary. I've got a mover and a seconder. Is anyone opposed to the motion, which is option 2? I'm opposed to it. Is there anyone else? Thank you. Councillor Duggan, would you like to open debate?
Thanks, Mr President. I'd like to start debate by saying that I'm very grateful to my fellow councillors and to the Shire directors for what is written on page 148 of the agenda, which recognises the importance of this land being considered for an equestrian area. My concern with the officer's recommendation is that by allowing the rezoning of the entire site to go ahead before we have had the opportunity to create a suitable master plan, a business plan, that we are, pardon the pun, we're putting the cart before the horse. I'm certainly not saying that I'm against zoning part of the land to being a rural zone and using it for a financial enrichment project in the future. However, if we zone this entire area rural at this time and then in 12 months' time, we find that that restricts us to be able to put forward other options for that land. That concerns me. And one thing that I've thought of with that is grant funding. We're about to have both state and federal elections, and we don't even know what state government is going to be in, let alone what policies they may bring and what grants they may provide and put on the table for LGAs. There may well be grants that are made available for sporting pursuits that is only available for land that is a reserve. So if we go ahead and zone this entire area as rural, request it to be zoned as rural, we may actually be shooting ourselves in the foot. We don't know. All I'm saying is let's hold off with the zoning request until the review is done. I particularly take into account what Ms Carla said this evening as part of the public statements, where there's other things that have yet also not been included that have changed since the last equine report was done on how that land could be used. And I think it's very important that we consider all those things before we start making a decision on what we zone as rural. I do ask that my fellow councillors remember that once this land is zoned rural, we are heading down a path for divestiture of the land. And if we do that prematurely, it may be one of the greatest mistakes I see us as a council doing, because it can shape the equestrian ability of our shire in the future. And that can potentially completely change where our shire goes. And we've already seen by the examples that we see in the northeast of the city, we don't want to be just another suburb that's the next suburb on from Armidale or Forestdale. It is our equestrian that makes us special. We must ensure that we do everything we can to keep that as part of our shire, and that is recognised, as I said, on page 148 of the agenda. I certainly am not against the idea of rural zoning if it's seen appropriate after a master plan and business plan is done. But I have grave concerns that it would be an error for us to act in haste, and we should follow a practical process, and that is review what that land is to be used for, review at the time where funding will be available, and then look at applying to MRS for zoning if it's seen appropriate at that time. So I'm not saying no, all I'm saying is slow down on the MRS zoning request. Look at our business case first. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Councillor Jarrett, do you want to speak or reserve?
I reserve, Mr.
Thank
President.
you. Councillor Mack, did you want to speak against?
Thank you, Mr. President. And I just probably want to start by mentioning this item has been to council a couple of times before, and it has been deferred on a couple of times to keep exploring options. And to perhaps use a quote from a fellow councillor here, that I feel like we're kicking the 10 down the road with this one. We've been looking at this one for a long time. This land was bought with the purpose to invest and sell, to help create an income for our Shire and to help lower rate increases. So I come back again to rates. And what are we doing to help ensure we have the lowest rate increase possible? I won't go back into what I've said, but I would foreshadow that if this motion is lost, we go back to the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mack. Is anyone else who'd like to speak for the motion? Councillor Bishop.
Thanks, Mr. President. Look, I'd just stress the importance of ensuring that we plan for the things we intend to do as a local government. Right now, we're electing to rezone land without a clear and proper plan for what we intend to do with it. I think it's best to be informed about what it is we will do with the land and what the financial implications will be for the ratepayer before making a decision such as this one. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is there anyone else who would like to speak against the motion? I'll speak against it, and it's going to be the third time this phrase is used this evening, but kicking the can down the road does come to light for this. This has been deferred several times. We've had a what I would use as a robust PCF in relation to this. I agree that we as a council need to have a plan, and the plan, I don't know when this land was purchased by the Shire, but it was certainly many years ago, maybe 2014, but that's, sorry, after 2017, it might have been 2018, 17, around then. Certainly then there was a plan. Council had a plan for that land to be bought. The whole purpose of the land to be purchased was another income stream for the Shire. I had some serious concerns about this, but the PCF that we had was a robust PCF, as I mentioned, and the concerns were very, very much explored, put out on the table, explored, asked, answered about the equine. And I note on page 152 of the agenda, the subject site is strategically positioned with a range of potential options to achieve the highest and best use of the land. It's necessary to request the West Australian Planning Commission to initiate the Metropolitan Region Scheme Amendment to take it out of a reserve and place it into a zoned land status, that being rural. This will ensure the financial sustainability of the property, maximise the efficient use of Council's freehold land assets. This will provide more flexibility in determining the future use of the land, including that associated with equine trails and or facilities. And I will commend the Deputy President because she was very vocal at the PCF about the equine trails and the equine master plan. This has now come back again, second or maybe even the third time to an ordinary council meeting. My concerns have been allayed by the inclusion of that bit about the equine trails and or facilities. And it certainly is ringing true in my ears about the community PCF we did a couple of weeks ago, where we saw the wonderful work that the Darling Downs Residents Association have done and the need for equine properties. And I believe that this is in line with what Council wanted several years ago. This is in line as a potential income source for our residents and ratepayers. This is also in line with what we can do to promote equine facilities, to promote our equine trails, and perhaps even be recognised, as we want to be, as an equine local government, an area where people can seek out nice properties with horses, which will make this a welcoming area, which is what we want to do. So I would certainly support the officer's recommendation, and I believe Councillor Mack did foreshadow that. Is there anyone who would like to speak for the motion? That being the case, Councillor Duggan, would you like to close?
Thanks very much, Mr President, and I thank councillors for not only the robust discussion at the PCF but their comments this evening. And if I may just respond to some of those, I do agree with what Mr President has said, that you know, there is the opportunity for some of this land to be rural zoned and to be horse properties. But being a horse owner, I can tell you that people don't want a horse property unless they have easy access to horse trails and equestrian centres. It's been stated in the agenda this evening how important it is that we have these equine centres which are linked through suitable trails, so that we have a number of these places available. And part of that is making sure that we have the reserves available to be that land. We may choose later on down the track to rezone this land if it's seen as being appropriate, and that may be all of it, but it may be part of it. It concerns me that we talk about our ratepayers now and giving them a sugar fix and increasing the income for our Shire. But if we lose our equine ability, if we have lots of 5-acre farms but none of them have access to trails and to equine centres, we will lose our horses, we will lose our equine. That is what's happening in the northeast of the city. It is very, very important that we ensure that these reserves are well thought out, well planned, and then we go to MRS and we ask for rural zoning. I don't see this as kicking the can down the road. We have a plan. We have asked for a business case to be submitted to the 25-26 budget, and that will then determine where we go from here and what we take to MRS to request there be a zone amendment. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. All those in favour of option 2, which is a moved motion? That's 3. All those against? Motion is lost 3-4. And Councillor Mack, you wanted to move? Excuse me.
Yeah, happy to go back to the foreshadowed officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for the motion, which is the officer's recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Bias. Is there anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us to agenda item 10.2, Infrastructure Services Report. 10.2.1 is award request for tender RFT 07-2024 Hopeland Road A and B Rehabilitation Project. Is there a councillor who would be happy to move a motion? If there's no mover, the motion will lapse to the next meeting. That brings us to agenda item 10.2. Agenda item 10.2.2, confidential new boundary road management agreement with the City of Armidale and Rowley Road maintenance. Councillors, I'm minded to move this to the end of the agenda when we do the other confidential report. If another councillor is in agreement, I'd be asking for someone to move that. Thank you, Councillor Mazzini. Is there a seconder? I'm happy to second it. Is there anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. So that will go to agenda item 10.2. Thank you. It'll be moved to agenda item, sorry, Mr. CEO.
10.2.2. Oh, sorry. 10.6.2.
Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 10.3.1. Excuse me. 10.3.1 is confirmation of payment of creditors. That was passed en bloc. 10.3.2 is monthly financial report July 2024. That has also been passed en bloc. Agenda item 10.3.3 is approval of the CAT Amendment Law 2024. Is there a councillor who is happy to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. Is there a councillor who's happy to second? Sorry, that's the officer's recommendation. Is there a councillor who's happy to second the motion? Thank you, Councillor Mazzini. Is anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us to agenda item 10.3.4, which is travel and accommodation policy. That agenda item was passed en bloc. That brings us to agenda item 10.4.1, which is community engagement reports, Briggs Park Recreation Precinct Master Plan and Serpentine Jarrahdale Community Recreation Centre Expansion Concept Design. There has been a motion with an alternate attached to it, circulated by Councillor... No, that's not the right one. We're only at 10.4.1. Right. Is there a councillor who's happy to move a motion in relation to 10.4.1? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is that the officer's recommendation?
No, Mr President, I prefer to move option 2. Thank you.
Thank you. Option 2. So as per the screen, when it gets up there. As per the screen, Councillor Duggan. Sorry.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is there a councillor who's happy to second option 2? The motion... Councillor Bias, you happy to second it? Thank you, Councillor Bias. Is there anyone opposed to the motion as moved and seconded? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Councillor Mack. Councillor Duggan, would you like to open debate?
Thanks, Mr President. I sent an email earlier on this week requesting a little more information that I'm sure all the fellow councillors have seen, and that is to actually look at whether we can perform the Concept Plan 1 now, and then into the future we can look at the addition of Concept Plan 2. The reason I ask that is because we talk extensively about future-proofing, and future-proofing to have 4 courts and 4 courts that are compliant, and yet realistically right now there is 2 courts that are non-compliant. If we go with option 2, we will have 2 courts that remain non-compliant, but there will be the addition of 2 courts that are compliant, and there will also be the space available for another additional outdoor court. Why is that important? It means that then further down the track we can even further future-proof by having 6 courts which will all be undercover, they will all be compliant, by then doing the option 1, which is the extension of the courts near the 2 that are already on site. So for mine, when we're talking about future-proofing, we certainly should be looking at 6 courts which will all be compliant in the long run. It also means, with our concerns for budget, we are looking at a $23 million cost now, which when we already have over $20 million outstanding that we haven't got anything on the ground to show for it with Kiernan Park, I think would be much more palatable to those that we are going to requesting funding, rather than requesting over double or about double what we already have sitting in the coffers that we are yet to actually put a building on the ground for Kiernan Park. So I think that looking at option 2 means that we can have a better staggered approach. It means that we can truly future-proof for our developing shire by allowing for 6 compliant courts, and it can allow us to plan for government funding when we have already proven later on down the track that we have got the 2 courts done, we've got Kiernan Park done, and then when we go back and ask for whatever the money at the day equivalent to $44 million, we can show that we've already create what's needed, and we can come to the party and use their money effectively. So that's why I look at option 2.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Councillor Bias, did you want to speak or reserve? Councillor Bishop, you're opposed.
Mr. President, before we go, can I just ask a point of clarification, please?
Yes.
I just wanted to clarify, we are talking, so option 2 is in preference of Master Plan 1, am I correct? And Master Plan 1 includes keeping the 2 existing basketball courts which are not compliant, is that correct? And option to go with Master Plan 2 would actually have 4 compliant courts.
I'll look at the Director of Community Engagement, who hopefully can provide an answer in regards to that question.
If I can refer elected members to page 187 of the officer's report, the SJCRC Concept 1 option illustrates the additional building with the 2 courts, and the existing courts remain as they are, and Briggs Park Master Plan Concept 1 illustrates that concept within the broader Briggs Park precinct. And then going down to page 190 of the agenda, that is the SJCRC Concept 2, which shows the full refurbishment of the facility, delivering 2 additional courts and all 4 courts being compliant. And then that is illustrated in the Briggs Park Master Plan Concept 2 on page 191 of the agenda. So that illustrates that expansion within the full Briggs Park Master Plan. Hope that assists.
Thank you, Director. Councillor Mack, does that assist? Thank you. Councillor Bishop, you were opposed. Did you want to speak against the motion?
Yes, thanks, Mr. President. And I'd like to foreshadow that if this motion doesn't pass, I'd move the officer's recommendation, which is option 1, aligning with Concept Plan 2. No matter how you slice it, this project to upgrade the recreation centre is a significant commitment, particularly financially. No matter which option we support as a council, would need to leverage the state and federal government, or either of the 2, to support delivering this project, and more importantly to align with government goals of improving the livability of Western Australian communities. The Concept Plan 2 is preferred by the community based on the stakeholder engagement, and it's also noted that the consultants who've been engaged on the project consider that the Concept Plan 2 aligns more with the future needs of the Shire. I note that in the option that has been moved, it's a redevelopment that would have to revisit within 10 years to ensure that we are meeting the needs of our community. I just do not think, when we're talking tens of millions of dollars, in either case requiring the support of different levels of government, that we should half shoot our shot here. I think we should be pursuing the most appropriate development, not just for our community now, but into the future, rather than running the risk that within 10 years the facility will again be unsuitable. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is there a councillor like to speak for the motion? That being the case, Councillor Duggan, would you like to close debate?
Thank you, Mr. President. I hear your concerns, Councillor Bishop. I do think the concerns for leveraging state and federal government sits actually with what I was saying, and that is it is much easier for us to leverage for support down the track for a $44 million commitment if we have already shown that we have delivered on our Concept Plan 1 for $23 million, and also our Keenan Park commitment, which, when we're talking kicking cans down the road, I think that well and truly sums that up. My other point is, which Councillor Bishop alluded to, is what the community wants. One thing that I haven't heard entered into conversation is part of Concept Plan 1, or Option 2, is that there is an additional outdoor court. What does that mean? In that time that there is disruption while the Concept Plan 2 is being built, that allows an additional court. So that would allow 3 courts that would be available. If we are to look at doing Option 1, Concept Plan 1 now, we would literally take out every single court that they have available to them to get this upgrade done. If we do Concept Plan 1, we do the separate courts first. They will then have 2 compliant courts plus the additional outdoor court. Then when we go back to putting in the other compliant courts, then at least there is something that they have there available as an option. So although I hear the concerns of the other councillors, I still feel that Option 2, that is endorsing Concept Plan 1 at this stage, makes better fiscal sense. It also makes better sense when we're looking at planning for the future for that upgrade of the rec centre that's going to be needed in, be it 4 years, 10 years' time. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. All those in favour of the motion? All those against? Motion is lost 2-5. Councillor Bishop, did you foreshadow the officer's recommendation?
Yes, I'll move that motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a councillor who is happy to second the motion, which is the officer's recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Mazzini. Is there anyone opposed? Yep. Councillor, sorry, that was moved, Councillor Bishop, and then seconded by Councillor Mazzini. I'll call again. Is anyone opposed to the officer's recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Councillor Bishop, would you like to open debate?
Thank you. Most of what I'll say will essentially reiterate my previous arguments, but no matter how you slice it, this is a significant financial commitment, and in any circumstance we will require the support of various different levels of government. I think it's important to listen to our community and what they need, and by not pursuing this option, I can see a situation where within the next 10 years we are again listening to our community frustrated that we were tasked with making a decision here, a significant decision worth tens of millions of dollars. We didn't listen to them now, and we are stuck having to listen to them complain because the facilities aren't suitable, and we don't know whether at this stage or in the future the state and federal government will come to the table to support this project. I think we shoot our shot now rather than wait and run the risk of delivering an inadequate facility and finding we are stuck with it.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Councillor Mazzini, would you like to speak or reserve?
I'll speak if that's right, Mr. President.
Thank you.
I'll keep this very, very short. I think one of the councillors, I apologise, I can't remember who it was, at our PCF asked the Director of Community Engagement what the thoughts were from the clubs when they were asked about the disruption phase, and it was made very, very clear that they were okay with it, and it was understanding that this is the better future-proofing option for the clubs that actively use the space. And I think I talk about consultancy and speaking to the community as much as I can, and that's a big part of what I like to do as a councillor in my personal agenda. So I think going off that, I think this is the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mazzini. Councillor Duggan, did you want to speak against? Thanks,
Mr. President. I find it really interesting that we keep bringing up the words future-proofing, and I admit when I first looked at both options, the one that is now presented to the council group was the one that I supported for that very reason. But then with further consideration, I could see that future-proofing with 4 courts was actually not future-proofing at all. It was future-proofing for 4 years, perhaps 10 years, we don't know, but it's certainly not going to be very long. Future-proofing for 6 years, plus allowing the option for 3 courts to be available while the major renovations happen, that's what true future-proofing is. So I find it, difficult to get my head back to where I was of thinking that future-proofing is $44 million now, when it would mean a complete disruption and only provide 4 courts rather than truly future-proofing, which would be allowing a staged development of 6 courts. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Duggan. Is anyone like to speak for the motion? Councillor Boss?
Not speaking for it, but I would like to ask a question.
Sorry, certainly.
To the director, just so that I'm clear, the $43 million figure that's being thrown around, that doesn't include the pavilion, does it?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Boss. Director of Community Engagement, happy to provide an answer.
Thank you, Mr. President, and through you, no, it doesn't.
Okay, so supplementary?
Certainly.
Thank you. If I recall, that was in the order of $8 million. So effectively, to do the redevelopment work plus deliver a pavilion, you're actually talking about $50 million in today's money, excluding any escalation costs between now and when the project may commence.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Boss. Any other questions, Councillor Boss? Is anyone else like to speak for the motion? That being the case, Councillor Bishop, would you like to close?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll finish by saying that this is one of those perfect opportunities to listen to the community. We've heard what they expect of us in this case. They're very much supportive of Concept 2. Both options come with significant cost. Both options will require us to leverage the state or federal government. One option will, and again we're throwing the word around, future-proof the facility and meet the expectations of the community. I think that's simply it. Either we listen to the community or we don't. Both options have a risk of cost escalations over time. Put simply, as a Shire, we can't do this project alone, and I think if we're going to ask for help, I think our community should see us asking for help with the things they want and not what we think is meeting them in the middle. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bishop. All those in favour of the motion? That's 5. All those against? Motion is carried 5-2. That brings us to agenda item 10.4.2, Community Sport and Recreation Facilities Fund, Forward Planning Round 24-25, Application and Prioritisation. Is there a councillor who would like to move a motion? Thank you, Councillor Duggan. That's the officer's recommendation.
Yes, thanks.
Thank you. Is there a councillor who is happy to second Councillor Duggan's? Thank you, Councillor Mack. Is there anyone opposed? Motion is carried unanimously. That brings us on to agenda item 10.4.3, Kiernan Park Recreation Precinct, delivery of Stage 1B BMX, project scope, timeline and funding options. And this time we have a motion with an alternate added, which Councillor Mack circulated this afternoon. Councillor Mack, would you like to move that motion?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President.
Can you please read out the addition that you've circulated?
Thank you. My alternate motion is as per the officer's recommendation with the added point 3C. Engage with the Byford BMX Club on track and facility maintenance matters at Briggs Park to provide a written update to Council by the end of October 2024 and present an update to Council at a policy concept forum by the end of November 2024.
Thank you, Councillor Mack. Is there a councillor who is happy to second the alternate motion as read out? Thank you, Councillor Bishop. Is there anyone opposed to the alternate motion? Motion is carried unanimously. And we'll need a reason for the difference, please, Councillor Mack.
Thank you. It would be to capture the ongoing commitment from the Shire to the existing track facilities. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to agenda item 10.4.4, award request for tender RFT 08-2024 Emergency Services Fleet, Servicing and Repairs. That agenda item was passed en bloc. That brings us to agenda item 10.5. 10.5 is Executive Services Reports. 10.5.1 is Payment Direction Deed for Waste to Energy Processing. That was passed en bloc. That brings us to agenda item 10.5.2, which is Minutes of the Rivers Regional Council, Ordinary Council Meeting 15th of August 2023. That also was passed en bloc. That brings us to agenda item 10.5.3, which is Charter for Regional Council Subsidiary. That also was passed en bloc. That brings us to agenda item 10.6.1, which is a confidential item. Can I please have a councillor move that we close the meeting to members of the public? Thank you, Councillor Jarrett. And Councillor Mazzini, are you happy to second? Is anyone opposed to closing the meeting to members of the public? Motion is carried unanimously. I would respectfully ask members of the public to please exit to the left.